Lesson 3.4, Multiplying Rationals. We'll start off talking about multiplying fractions. Now remember, we're going to use our same multiply-divide rules. If you're multiplying numbers with the same sign, our product will be positive, and if you're multiplying numbers with different signs, your product will be negative. There are two ways we can think about multiplying fractions. The first way, we can multiply the numerators, or the top numbers, multiply the bottom numbers, or the denominators, and then simplify if possible. Here in example number 1, 5 times negative 2/3. I can see that I'm multiplying numbers with different signs, and so I know my answer is going to be negative, right? It's going to be negative something. Now to multiply these fractions, let's write 5 as a fraction, so put it over 1, 5 over 1, times negative 2/3. So let's do this the first way. Let's multiply the top numbers. 5 times negative 2, that would be negative 10. And 1 times 3, that is 3. So that would be my answer, negative 10/3, as an improper fraction. If I make this a mixed number, this would be negative 3 and 1/3, right? So either of these would be my answer, negative 10/3 or negative 3 1/3. Example number 2, I have negative 2/3 times negative 1/2. Now the second possible way you can think about multiplying fractions is you can cross simplify first and then multiply the top numbers and multiply the bottom numbers. What cross simplify means is you're looking for numbers on top and bottom that are divisible by the same factor. And so when looking at these fractions, I see a 2 in the numerator and a 2 in the denominator. And I know 2 is of course divisible by 2, or I could say 2 over 2 is equal to 1. And so let's cross simplify 2 over 2 to be the same as 1 over 1. Now since I've cross simplified, I can multiply the top and multiply the bottom as normal. Negative 1 times negative 1, that is 1, and 3 times 1, that is 3. So my answer is 1/3. And my answer should be positive, right? Because I was multiplying numbers with the same sign. And same sign answer is positive. So positive 1/3. In example number 3 here, we're going to multiply more than two numbers together. And when you multiply more than two numbers together, you need to count the negative signs. If you count the negative signs and there are an even number of negative signs, your product or your answer will be positive. If you count the negatives and you have an odd number of negatives, your answer will be negative. So I have negative 2/3 times negative 1/2 times negative 3/5. So let's count the negative signs. I see 1, 2, 3 negatives. There are 3, I'll put NEG, 3 negatives. And I know 3 is an odd number, and if there are 3 negatives, my answer will be negative. Okay? Now, I'm going to cross simplify this so that it will be a little bit easier. So here I have 2 over 2, 2 in the top and 2 in the bottom, and I know 2 over 2 is the same as 1 over 1, right? Next, I'm going to look for another place I can cross simplify. Here is 3 over 3. I have a 3 in the top and a 3 in the bottom. If I divide the top and the bottom both by 3, well, 3 divided by 3 is 1, and 3 divided by 3 is 1. So 3 over 3 is the same thing as 1. Now that I've cross simplified, let's multiply the top numbers. I have 1 times 1 times 1, so of course that is 1. And on the bottom I have 1 times 5, which is 5. Now remember, I said my answer should be negative because I'm multiplying 3 negative numbers. So my answer is negative 1/5. Negative 1/5. Number 4, I have negative 7/8 times 4/7 times negative 8/9. So I'm multiplying more than two numbers, so let's count the number of negative signs. Here I see 1 negative, 2 negatives. I see 2 negative signs. I'm going to put it NEG, 2 negative signs. I know 2 is an even number, so I have an even number of negatives, which means my product here will be positive. Now let's look and see, can I cross simplify anywhere? Well, here I have 7 over 7. That's the same thing as 1, so I'm going to cross the 7's out, make them 1. And here I have 8 over 8, and I know 8 over 8, that is also the same thing as 1, so I'm going to cross those 8's out, make them 1. I don't see any other place I can cross simplify, and so I'm just going to multiply the top numbers, or the numerators. 1 times 4 times 1, that's the same thing as 1. And on the bottom, or in the denominator, 1 times 9, that is 9. And I said my answer would be positive, so my answer is positive 1/9. Positive 1, oh nope, that's not right. 1 times 4 times 1, that's 4, right? Not 1. So positive 4/9. Always double check your multiplication. Alright, now multiplying decimals. When we multiply decimals, You can put the number with more digits in it in the top, and you do not have to line up the decimals. Okay, unlike addition and subtraction, you don't have to line up the decimals when you multiply, and so we can simply ignore the decimals and multiply as normal. So that's what I'm going to do here. I have negative 3.6 times 0.24. I see that I have a positive times a negative, so different signs. I know my answer is going to be negative something. This number has more digits in it, right? It has 1, 2, 3 digits. So I'm going to put that number in the top. I'm going to put this number in the bottom. Okay, and of course I'm going to multiply. As you can see, my decimals aren't lined up, and that's okay because I don't need to line them up when multiplying. So let's multiply as normal. 6 times 4 is 24. 6 times 2 is 12, plus 2 is 14. 6 times 0 is 0, plus 1 is 1. All right, so I've used that, I've used that, I've used that. I'm going to add placeholder 0, continue multiplying. 3 times 4 is 12. 3 times 2 is 6, plus 1 is 7, and 3 times 0 is 0. So I add and I get 864 in my answer. Now the last step, this is very important, you need to place your decimal. And you place your decimal by counting how many digits there are in the decimal, in the numbers that you multiplied. And so here, how many digits were after the decimal point? I see 1, 2. So there were 2 digits after the decimal. And this number, here's the decimal point, there was 1 digit after the decimal. Okay, so I have 2 digits after the decimal and 1 more digit. So I have 1, 2, 3 total digits after the decimal. And so that's how many digits should be after the decimal in your answer. And so I'm going to start after the last digit in my answer, and I'm going to go 3 places to the left. 1, 2, 3. And right here is going to be my decimal point. So this is going to be, I can add 0 here, 0.864, 864 thousandths would be my answer. Okay, one more example. I have negative 4.3 times negative 6.2. I have same signs, so I know my answer will be positive. I'm going to set this up, 4.3 times 6.2, and multiply as normal. 2 times 3 is 6, 2 times 4 is 8. Add placeholder 0. 6 times 3 is 18. 6 times 4 is 24, plus 1 is 25. Once I add, I get 2666. Now I have to count how many digits did I have after the decimal point. In this number, there was 1 digit after the decimal. In this number, there was 1 digit after the decimal. And so there are 2 digits total after the decimal point, and so there should also be 2 digits after the decimal in my answer. So start on the far right and go 2 places to the left. 1, 2. Right there is your decimal, so that's 26.66. And we said our answer should be positive because we're multiplying numbers with the same sign.